Hey everyone, and welcome to my channel once again. So in the last video we have learned how we can draw these anemone flower perspective. So based on the last video I have created one more composition having 3 flowers into it, and today we are going to learn so much about watercolor techniques and tips to paint this particular flower or any flower of your choice. This flower is gonna be in white color, so this is white anemone flower, which I feel it's difficult to paint because we are painting it on the white sheet. But this is gonna be super simple even if you are a beginner, because I'm going to show you every technique in detail step by step so that you can paint these things easily. So let's start with the painting. So for the flowers I'm using wet on wet technique. So you need to wetten your flower area, including all the petals and curls shape into it, but make sure you are not wetting too much or you are not keeping it too dry. Just damp sheet you can consider. So how to find out whether it is not too wet or not too dry? You can apply a layer of water into it and just tilt your sheet a little bit to see how much sheen is visible in your sheet. So if it is too much visible, then it's too wet, but if it is slightly uh, shine into your sheet, then it is perfect. You can again go back and forth multiple times if you feel like your sheet is now dried, and also let your sheet absorb a little amount of water into it. So you can apply water and let it be for some time so that it will soak some water, and then it is not too wet and not too dry, and then your sheet is ready. So you can always tilt your sheet a little bit to check whether you are getting layer of water into your sheet. Now I think mine is perfect. Now I'm creating a very light gray shade, so you can use direct gray shade or you can create your own gray shade. So I have mixed blue and brown together to make this one. This is very light in color, and I'm going through one by one petal. I'm applying these colors into my petals. You can also leave some of the area, or else you can do one thing: you can fill all the gray area into your petal like I am doing for this particular one, and then you can use dry brush technique to get some of the color from your petals. So I'm drying my sheet. This is almost dry brush, and then I'm grabbing some of the color from my petals. So that is how you can get a little lighter shade and little shine into your petals having gray shades into it. So these things you can do while doing wet on wet. I think these 2 petals are now dried, so I am applying more water, and then I'm repeating the same process having gray color. So that is something you can do easily, I guess, but make sure you are using very light shade of gray, because these are white flower, we don't want to overdo it. Likewise, we have to paint all other flowers. I have 2 more. Let me show you one more technique to do the same thing. So what I'm doing, I'm not wetting my petal, I'm just applying a layer of color in one side of the petal, and then with the help of clean water I'm spreading those color into other areas and making it visible for other areas as well. So this is the second technique you can utilize while doing this kind of flower. So likewise I have painted all my petals. Do the same thing for your third flower as well. Now I'm adding a little bit of pink or purple kind of shade into the petals. So I'm applying those color into my petals and spreading those with the help of clean water, so that we will get a hint of pink color into our petals. Not too much, just a hint of purple or pink kind of shade you can add. We don't have to overpower the pink color, we just need a little hint of pink into it. I'm showing you for only one flower, and then you can apply this process for other flowers as well. So I'm done with all the 3 flowers. Now let's create the background. So for the background, again I'm going to use wet on wet technique, but this time make sure your background is too much wet, like it's a wetty background. This should not be damp. This is more towards on the wet side. Do it section by section. So what I'm doing, I am applying water. You can also use little shades into the water, like you don't have to have use clean water around the flower. So apply a watery layer around the flower. Make sure you are not ruining your flower shape, and then add multiple colors in between. So if you mix pink and green, you will get muddy color, but because our sheet is quite wet, we are not getting, and we can see those two color easily. These two color are quite visible. So I am using pink and green color for the background, and I am wetting my sheet thoroughly. Also make sure you're wetting the edges, because we don't want to form any hard edges of colors. So keep adding a layer of water around the outer area where you don't want to see the colors, but add water so that we will avoid hard edges of color into those areas. Let me do the other sections as well. I'm repeating the same thing. I'm applying a layer of water with quite good consistency, then I'm applying colors into it, then I'm applying clean water around the outer area so that we will not adding any hard edges into my painting. So these things we are going to repeat around all the flowers that we have, so it will give you a very nice focused white flowers into your sheet. I like to do these kind of background whenever it comes to the white element into my painting, or else whenever you try to create some background effect for your painting. So these things you can do while creating your background. The only thing we need to consider, you need to wet in your sheet thoroughly, and then you can apply colors into it. If you want to avoid hard edges, then you can apply more water around the outer area. So I'm repeating the same thing again and again throughout my sheet to create some beautiful background. So always remember, it's very important on wet technique, like how much water you need into your sheet, or how much water or color consistency you need into your brush. So these things are important when we are working on wet technique. So to paint flower, we have used damp sheet, not too wet, not too dry, but for the background we are using wet sheet. It's quite wet. Now let me show you one more thing which we can do in our background. So check whether your sheet is wet or not. If it is wet, then you can add little dots of water in that particular area to get blooming kind of effect. You can also do it on the dry area as well. So let's say for example I need a little bit of blooming effect in this particular area which is already dried. So I'll apply more water into this particular area, let the water absorb into the sheet, and then you can apply clean water into those areas to get some different kind of blooming effect in your background. Now let it dry, because our background is quite wet, so let it dry. Meanwhile, create your ovary area with the help of black color. I'm not using any other color, I'm directly using black color. So based on our perspective, we have decided like how much ovary we have to make visible for all the flowers. So as you can see, there are variation in the ovary size and shape. So this is totally based on flower perspective. I have already explained all these things in the previous video. I will add a link into the description section so that you can refer to those videos if you want to know how we can draw a different perspective. Now my sheet is quite dry, and as you can see, we are getting this cauliflower effect or blooming kind of effect in our background. So this is something we needed. Now my sheet is quite dry, so we can add stems and leaves. So what we are doing here, as per watercolor techniques are concerned, now we are doing wet on dry sheet. So my sheet is dry, but I'm doing stems and leaves, those kind of things, having wet color into the dry sheets. So I have added stems. As far as anemone leaves are concerned, these are quite simple in structure because it does not have any defined shape. You can add little zigzag kind of pattern having a deep serrated leaves into it. The shape and size you can keep varying, and likewise you can randomly paint all these leaves for all the flowers, broader leaves, longer leaves, attach all those together to create one leaf. So I'm repeating the same thing for other two flowers as well, having different shape and size into the leaves. I'm going to do little bit of detailing into the ovary section. So now I'm adding a stamen around the ovary and adding little dots at the tip of my stamen. So I'm doing it with the help of tip of my brush. You can use a smaller brush as well if you want to, and I'm going to repeat this in other two flowers as well. So it's quite simple. Around your ovary you need to create fine lines like this using tip of your brush, and then you can add little dots about to the fine lines to create overall ovary of the anemone flower. Okay, now with the help of damp brush, not too wet, not too dry, I'm using light shade of pink color around the curl area of my petals. So this petal having one curl at the top, so I'm adding the light shade of pink in here using damp brush. You can also spread the color a little bit with the help of clean water if needed. Likewise, you can also do the same thing for the background petals as well. Like this small petal is hidden in between two big petals, so I'm adding the little pink shade and then spreading those colors with the help of clean water and damp brush. You can also add a little hint of pink into your petals if needed. Make sure you're not adding any hard edges into your flowers. Let me do few more curls so that you can understand it how we needed these things, because these are very delicate. So do it slowly and carefully, and do these things with the lighter shade, because these are white flower, not pink flower. So we are adding just a hint of these things into our flower. So let me do one more here. This is also having a little curl at the top. Repeat the same thing for all the flowers and all the petals. Now if you want, you can do a little bit of more detailing into your background. If you feel like you need a little darker shade into your background, so you can repeat the same thing what we did earlier. So I'm adding a little bit more color into this particular section, but if it is needed, then only you can do these things. If it is not needed, that's perfectly fine. Don't overdo it, otherwise you will end up having hard edges into your background. Now you can add a little bit of dark shades into your stems, so these detailing you can do later on the dry sheet having wet color. So we have learned multiple things about wet and wet techniques and watercolor techniques. So hope you have liked this video. Do let me know if you have any feedback for me, and thank you so much for all your love and support, and thank you so much for watching my videos. See you guys in the next video.